we have to have an idea of what ambitions that we really have are. It's a bit like a menu. We have several different things that we're aspiring to achieve. Maybe one's more prominent than others, but nevertheless, we generally have a montage of options in front of us. And my deal is that there's big, hairy, audacious goals, there's smart goals, but in my mind, the most important thing is that you got the right goal. And if we have the right goal, and let's say that would be like the GPS destination, then at least we have an idea where we're headed, and we've selected it prudently because we've looked at the right goal criteria, and we've decided for a variety of different reasons that this is the most appropriate goal to pursue. The second thing is that I always look at is the readiness, like how ready are you for what? Because taken as an entity that has assets, how we think, where we've been, what our experience is, how we interpret the world, what we say when, what our resources are, tools, materials, team, etc. All of those inform us of a state of readiness. And to me, that would be like the starting point in a GPS. Most people have no idea where they are. So they're starting automatically off course. And if you're drawing a straight line between where you are and where you want to go, but you don't know where you're starting from, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hit pay dirt on the first try.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and our special guest today is Dr. Jeff Spencer, a man who spent 5 decades creating champions. At the age of 11, Jeff wrote a contract with himself to make the 1972 Olympic Games, a goal he accomplished where he competed in 2 separate cycling events and in the process solidified his fascination with goal achievement. As a human performance visionary and legendary cornerman coach, Jeff has helped athletes win over 40 gold medals and cycling teams to 8 Tour de France victories. Jeff has also authored 3 books, been awarded International Sports Chiropractor of the Year, is creator of the Champions Blueprint methodology, and had his glass-blowing art displayed in some of the world's finest galleries. Today, Jeff is most renowned as mentor to thought leaders and businesses who want to exponentially grow and catapult to iconic status. Some of his notable clients include Tiger Woods, Sir Richard Branson, the band U2, Lance Armstrong, Nike, Hitachi, Bulletproof, and so on. And on a personal note, I got to meet Jeff through the Genius Network, a wonderful community that we're both members of. Through a colleague named Nick Peterson, who's wonderful and has been a guest on the show as well. And Jeff, it's just such an honor to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So you have done so many incredible things, extraordinary things. What do you think is kind of your biggest contribution or the most important thing that you've done in your life?
Well, I mean, I have done a lot of cool things, but, for sure, the adoption of my daughter when I was 58 at the height of my game, by far the most important thing that I've ever done. She was 10 years old. We adopted her from Colombia, so it was a very unusual adoption. Most people don't want to have anything to do with kids that have lived in severe poverty and under very difficult circumstances with abuse. They just kind of look at them as damaged goods. And my wife and I were called to it, and without a doubt, the most profound experience that I've ever had.
Thank you for sharing that. And what is her name?
Kin, K-I-N.
Oh, I love
Kin.
it.
Thank you.
And what have you learned from that experience for yourself?
Well, first, the genesis of it, when we got back to California after going through the adoption process, you have to go to Colombia, take possession of the child for 6 weeks, and then you vote. You going to go home as a family, or are you going home empty-handed? Everybody votes, so we voted to go home as a family. We got to California. I told my wife, I said, this is a formidable situation here because she didn't speak any English. We don't speak any Spanish. We have no language here. And I said, she also has no school. She's 10. She has PTSD and ADHD from getting beaten up and physically abused since the age of 4. She has a parasitic-ridden body. She has severe malnutrition for 10 years. She doesn't trust anybody. I said that this is not an average adoption where everybody lives happily ever after. I mean, this is like human combat is what this is. I know where, I know the implications of this because my involvement dealing with very precocious people and making them manifest what their genius and talents are. I know what it was that we were facing. So I told her that we're gold medal parents. Me being an Olympian, I'm not interested in silver or bronze. It's gold or nothing. And I told her that tomorrow I have to reduce and eliminate 90% of my professional availability, be her father. And along with that goes 90% of our income. And that's the way it is. So we stepped into raising our child, and my wife cried every day for 10 years. It was so difficult. And then one day we got up and she was a little bit different. And I'm very happy and proud to say that she was able to graduate from college, with honors, and just as a beautiful human being, that's the mother just of a beautiful grandchild. So it was 10, 12 years of serious combat, to stay in the game and do what has to go right, and our objective was to manifest the potential. It wasn't to save a life. And so what I learned from this, number one, you can love anybody. You don't need a special reason. It's a decision that you make. It is a one-way street, and it's unconditional. And I know that that's possible because we've done it. And the rewards of being able to step into that, where you love the person more than you love the possibility, the outcome of whatever dream that you have is. I also learned that you have to trust the process, because sometimes that's all you got. Just for us to get through one day, get to the evening where it wasn't this battle, was its own victory. And sometimes you're hanging by a thread. You have nothing to hang your hat on. You have no security about any future whatsoever. You just have to trust the process. And I also learned in this that when you answer the calling rather than chase the goal, if you answer the calling that you're drawn to, there's always enough time and energy and resources to do whatever is necessary on behalf of someone else. What else did I learn? I learned that how you show up does matter. Most important question we can ask ourselves every day is, how are we going to show up for other people? And if people had shown up differently for my daughter, she wouldn't have the scars that she has and the difficulty and the challenges that she faces that she didn't ask for. I think every one of us every day has got to decide, draw a line in the sand, who we are and what are we going to give other people. We show up from our best, and it helps us get over us, and it helps them because they have a model to aspire to that has value in the human domain. And I would say probably most of all is that you never ever withhold the possibility of a miracle. You never give up on that. You can't command it into existence, but you can't petition for it. And in the meantime, you show up for duty and you get the job done. You give everything you've got to make it happen. And whatever happens outside of that, then, so be it, because you showed up and you've answered the call, and nobody could ask anything more of you in life if you've done that. So that's what we learned. I learned.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you and your wife for that commitment that you've made.
Easy to do.
Well, that's the power of love.
Really easy to do. If you have a purpose bigger than yourself, then life takes on an entirely different dimension. The frustration comes when we don't get what we want in our own time. When you're showing up in service of other people, it's the same thing in the coaching that I do. If you're there when you need to be and you're of sound counsel and you have the ability to shortcut people's path to their bigger futures, then you're living a life abundantly, outside of all the other stuff that we measure our life success by.
Yeah, as you were describing kind of the journey with Ken, I was thinking about how there are so many similarities to what CEOs and senior leaders, entrepreneurs face in terms of not having certainty, that daily combat, and yet holding that faith, for that miracle, not quite knowing where the resources, the guidance, the mentorship is going to come from, but continuing to steer forward. Because there is a higher purpose, when there is that true, genuine, heartfelt mission purpose for something bigger than ourselves. So tell us, how do you see the work that you do with business leaders, thought leaders? What's unique about what you give to them that really takes them to that iconic status?
Well, first off, I'd say that, I don't spend any time in the athletic world. Most people think because I was an Olympian, all I deal with is athletes. I don't. If somebody needs help winning a gold medal, I can do that. But, all my work is really done in the business space. That's my passion. Well, I know that I have two things. I have several things here that make me distinct, in my own opinion. Number one, my age. I'm 73. And so there's nothing that I haven't seen. And if you haven't seen it, then you can't really guide a person to that elusive 1 or 2% that makes the difference at the top. You have to breathe it. It has to be in your DNA. And having been an Olympian, I know how to win. I know how to win big repeatedly and stay in the game over a lifetime to create uh, a life of lasting value, but also a legacy of importance that showcases what's possible, that remains in our wake for people to look at to see what we do with our time and our talents. And because I have this basic proficiency in so many different things because of where I've been, whether it's healthcare, I'm a trained physician, so to speak. I have a master's degree in sports science. I was an Olympian. I can see everything from every vantage point, like in real time. So I can construct the path forward for the client rather than trying to make the client fit my model. And the thing that I see that is very pervasive is that it's not that we don't have enough information, but the real success to being able to move forward to get to the finish line in least time with least effort is to be able to select the important things that need to be there in what proportion so that you've created a model that allows exponential performance to be able to happen. And that's about synergistic parts. It's not about adding more or working harder. It's not about more hacks or individual things. Everybody's got enough hacks, but which ones do you select? Because there's only so much time and energy to work together as a single system. Yeah, when you got the right hacks and you can read the terrain,
Yeah.
and you're not mistaking certain things for something that it's not, and you can peek around the corner and see what's coming, like I can because I've been in the game so long, then getting from where you are to where you want to get to has just a phenomenally exponential view of certainty attached to it because you're seeing it through every angle. And my position on this is that history doesn't lie. Our mind can trick us, our emotions can trick us. Things that we read may not be true. We don't know, but history is always the best reference point, I believe, for being able to interpret where we are, what that means, and what are the actions that we take to be able to move forward towards the finish line to become a repeat winner. And that's what I bring to the conversation, whether it's healthcare, good. I was in practice for 22 years. If it's about, winning the biggest award on the planet, great. Well, I've done that myself in, many different areas. So I kind of feel like, I have this ability to comprehensively see things again, like from every angle and decide how much of what needs to be there to make the most progress in the least amount of time.
And I'm grateful that you're sharing with us how important that higher perspective is. Um, and and what I would love is if you can share even more specificity around how we can gift that to ourselves in the sense of how do we know what to focus on? How do we get that place of certainty, right? Where we're not doubting. How do we make those decisions?
Yeah, well, here's what I know to be true. And this is the way that I approach it is that we have to have an idea of what ambitions that we really have are. It's a bit like a menu. We have several different things that we're aspiring to achieve. Maybe one's more prominent than others, but nevertheless, we generally have a montage of options in front of us. And my deal is that there's big, hairy, audacious goals, there's smart goals, but in my mind, the most important thing is that you got the right goal. And if we have the right goal, and let's say that would be like the GPS destination, then at least we have an idea where we're headed and we've selected it prudently because we've looked at the right goal criteria and we've decided for a variety of different reasons that this is the most appropriate goal to pursue. The second thing is that I always look at is the readiness, like how ready are you for what? Because taken as an entity that has assets, how we think, where we've been, what our experience is, how we interpret the world, what we say when, what our resources are, tools, materials, team, et cetera. All of those inform us of a state of readiness. And to me, that would be like the starting point in a GPS.
Mm.
Most people have no idea where they are. So they're starting automatically off course. And if you're drawing a straight line between where you are and where you want to go, but you don't know where you're starting from, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hit pay dirt on the first try. And so I feel for myself that when I understand what a person's aspirations are, and I know what their state of readiness is because we've gone through the assessment of that and determined that with high specificity, then we draw a straight line between the two, and the body of evidence that we have in front of us tells us what we should be doing first. It's very clear to us. And as we start to proceed forward, then we get blowback and feedback that tells us how to adjust course to eventually get to the target in least time with least effort. Those are the things I think we need to know. And there are a couple of principles that I might add if I could. Number one, it's important that we always do the one or two things that count. In the success of a person's journey, in my opinion, is not drawing lines through the to-do list, because that's a losing proposition because those lists only get bigger and more complicated. And a lot of the stuff becomes obsolete, over time. So I found that as long as you're pursuing the one or two things that really matter and you can discern that, then you're taking the best path forward using the least energy to be able to get to eventually where you want to get to. Because quite honestly, our plans that we make are best estimates against the future that we perceive will be possible based on a current knowledge of what we think the context is going to be. So it really, at best, it's a projection. And the likelihood of it being what we think it is once we get there is almost like zero. So by definition, being able to read the terrain as we go and make the adjustments as the plan meets reality is really the secret to that. And two other things that I want to mention here that I think are relevant is that it's not about harder work or working smarter. In my opinion, it's about being in receivership of best ideas, because I think people waste way too much energy trying to find the perfect fit or trying to find their why. They're looking under every rock, with a flashlight, electron microscope, trying to chase and trying to find it. And that takes an incredible amount of energy, and it leads to immense levels of frustration that depletes a person. But if we stay in receivership, where we opened up our soul, we opened up our consciousness to let revelations and insights flood our field of vision here, then we can be gifted with the biggest and best ideas, because we know those always come when you're going to the bathroom or whether you're at a stoplight. It never comes from staring at the computer trying to force something into existence. And so when we show restraint against the compulsion to try to push and force things to happen, mostly because we're afraid if we don't do it, our lives will evaporate, eviscerate, and collapse, which they won't, then we get these bigger, better ideas that are gifted to us that are within the scope of what we can do. And when we do that as our framework, then we can create a life bigger and better than we could have ever have intellectually conceived of in advance.
So it seems that discernment is a starting point in terms of what is the right goal. Many of the people listening have many opportunities that could be available to them, many paths that they could go in. And so discerning what is the right goal, discerning, as you said, our readiness level for that, being able to really read the terrain and pivot as needed to be able to assess reality, right? Is the truth, objective truth, where we are. And then receiving, right? That receivership kind of mode where we can receive the insights, the guidance, the intuition, our heart's intuition, restraint against that repulsion, if you will. So there are many R's here in the sense of things that can be very helpful to us. And I'm curious, how do we do it? What are some questions that we can ask ourselves, things that we can do to, number one, assess what is the right goal, intention, the thing that matters most, and our readiness level?
Sure. Well, first off, the right goal, there are 5 letters and right, RIGHT. So we can kind of look at that as a kind of a clue on how we should look at what we're considering pursuing. So it's pretty simple. The R stands for resonance. Do you actually have a soul resonance with what it is that you're considering to pursue? And if it's all intellectual and you've got like a personal dread factor attached to it because you're just thinking about how hard it's going to be and you don't really have the gravity or the magnetism there because there's no resonance with it, then it's probably not the right goal at the right time. And, if it's 90% enough there, well, 90% is good enough to move on to the next letter. So if there's enough resonance there, then I is impact. Does this goal, once achieved, have the impact on me, us, others, the planet, and everything else that should be considered? Is there enough impact for me to be able to pursue this? Yes or no? If it's 90% good, then we're still in the running. It's still sort of applying, it's on the short list for being a right goal. So then we go to the G, which is growth. Is there actually enough aspiration in this for me that if I do it, it will cultivate and grow what my potential is to make me a more competent goal achiever, which is really a manifestor of one's talents that is our contribution to give back to humanity? Well, then we're looking pretty good. So now we're batting three out of five. We got two more to go. And so then we look at the H in right. Is there enough humanity in this? Is this a mercenary play for money? Or is this something that's going to really do some good for humanity? And we kind of do the math on that and we kind of check in and we, do the math in our head. And we also listen with our soul to reveal to us whether there's enough humanity in this, because right now there's no shortage. This is something that, in my opinion, needs to be paramount in the forefront for sure. And then T in right is time. Is this really the right time to pursue the goal? Yes or no? Or are you just trying to make something happen to feel better? Are you doing something to prove it to other people that you can do it when they're telling you you can't? I mean, there's all sorts of reasons for doing things that aren't the right reason. Do you actually have the time to do this? Don't kid yourself. Don't get the shoehorn out and try to make it happen. If it's not going to happen, let's be honest about it. You know, is there and do you have enough time to do this? And finally, is the timeline to a projected completion of the goal appropriate for you? Can you deal with it? Like for me in the Olympics, I gave myself 10 years. Yeah, it was a hard 10 years, no doubt about it, but I'm glad I did it. So that's a initial look at what it is through a very personal human view. It's almost like a goal with humanity. It's a goal for the soul that maybe fits our role. Not to be a poet here, but just to say that I think that those are really important things if we're going to live a life and belief of self, like we're actually doing something of value, which I think is extraordinarily important. So that's the right goal criteria.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah, you're welcome.
these criteria, because you said earlier, that when something matters, right, when it kind of meets these heart-centered, soul-centered criteria, then all of the resources and guidance will show up, right? It's almost like the
Absolutely.
universe has our back. And that has a kind of a spiritual perspective to it. And you have worked with so many individuals who have accomplished pretty extraordinary goals, incredible things for humanity. How important is it to take the time to do the assessment that you've just taken us through?
Well, the right goal is one part of it. That's kind of looking at the objective. And as I said, uh, the right goal is related to our current state of readiness. And we talked about the criteria for readiness because really our readiness is the time, length, and resources to any goal that we currently have. That's what it is. It's a currency that informs us of how long is this actually going to take.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that, then I think we're kind of jumping into the deep end a little bit too quick. And we could be also undercutting what our
Mm.
possible goal achievement might be. So we may be discounting ourselves. We may be setting ourselves up for some difficulty. I don't know. I'd have to look at it like that. But for sure, the readiness is, in my opinion, the most important thing because you can want it as bad as anybody could want anything. But if we don't have the readiness for it, then we could be setting ourselves up for heartache. And I see this all the time. And people are making goals that aren't really fitting who they are. There are some people that are really nano focus. They like really small details. There's some people that like the big picture, some people that like small details, and because that's their constitutional gift, they can't answer the question, how are you going to influence 1 billion people? That's not a question that they can answer, because it's not within their scope. And why should they ask that? I think what's really important here is that we take a look at us and what our assets are and what we're best at, and where do we feel most alive in our contribution, whatever that is. I think that that should be the target, because that creates a life of intrinsic meaning and value, and it also brings outcomes and possibilities to other people that may need something of what we've got, that we've worked and we've created, by being obedient and adherent to our gifts without trying to compare ourselves to everybody else. I mean, can we just put that aside for a second or forever? You just kind of look at us and where do we best fit? And can we step into that? Can we not do the comparison game? I think that's something that we humans do really well. But I do believe on the other side of that, there's the calm waters of connection with self as we really are. And when we align ourselves with that which we know it to be, then the friction is removed from our life, and the life value and tranquility of being that we're getting, because we know we're showing up with honor, to honor our talents and come from that place. I don't know that there's a better outcome, quite honestly, because I know at my age, what's really important is that, I walk off the field for the last time knowing that I've done everything that I could possibly do, not playing by other people's rules, but by internally looking inward at myself and answer my own callings as to where I should be and what I should be doing. Again, it takes a while to get to that place, but that's something that I feel is extraordinarily important in the journey. And let me add one more thing, if I can, here, is that one of the things that I do with my clients, I've developed a model here. It's called the Life Lens Progression. And the observation is that every 10 years, we look at life in a very different way than we ever thought of as being possible. But when we get there, we see that it is true. And I see that that's like biologically encoded into us, in my opinion, that activates every decade. So at a certain point, we can't help but look at things in a certain way other than what it is. That's why we can't force anybody to see anything prematurely. But if we understand what's coming and we can look around the corner, then we can avoid many of the problems that people don't have to have, actually a majority of them. And it sets us up for our best ability to be able to seize the best opportunities that are highly probable. And the two things that I see in the business world and the entrepreneurial world, the two things that are the public enemy number one is number one, making decisions on what you think it is when it's not. And it takes about 60 years to get through a full life preview, like 20-year generations where you've kind of seen it all for the first time. And sometimes as we're moving through that, we're making decisions on a presumption of what we think it is when it's maybe not. And those are the things that can get us into trouble. I've seen this only like a million times. And then the inability to peek around the corner and see what's coming. I feel for myself, I had the advantage because I've been playing at the top, for over 60 years, still actively in the game. There's nothing I haven't seen. So I can take where a person is, and I know their trajectory. I know what their assets are. I know the speed at which they're progressing. I could kind of triangulate all that, and I know what's coming. And it's like, well, if that's what we want, good. Well, let's just stay on this course here. But if it's not, then we need to take some pretty serious evasive action. So those are the two things that I see that people are at most risk for in terms of either a premature stall or worse yet, a derail and plan. And when that happens, then the person unfortunately may start to give up on themselves, thinking that, they're the problem, where it was just a misinterpretation set of circumstances.
That's right. And those misinterpretations, those false assumptions, those false truths, when we're making decisions, can absolutely be, I don't want to say the word negated in terms of like avoided, but certainly we can create more certainty in our decisions, more objectivity, in part because of, years and living and going through these cycles, and by accessing our heart's intuition. So when we can get into a place, and I know you know that this is true, when we are in a really coherent, objective state, when we are able to hold the complexity of different things and what's behind the corner and different mindsets, a paradoxical mindset, when we're in that place, when we're able to see the complexity, see conflicting opinions, and we're not sure of what the truth is, we haven't lived enough or we haven't had enough exposure to have that higher perspective yet, we can get coherent and access our heart's intuition, like our own inner mentor, our own self, and ask the questions. And oftentimes we'll get guidance or synchronicities, that non-local intuition that will guide us toward that right decision, and help us to see the truth, which oftentimes is something that our protective unconscious system can block us from, because it's trying to keep us safe and protect us, perhaps telling us we're not ready for something that maybe we are, or that we are ready when we're not, right? Either way.
Yeah, of course.
So I want to kind of pause and kind of get your perspective on that, on intuition and the wisdom of the heart, wisdom of the soul.
Well, certainly, I think a couple of things are really important here is that the way that we experience our conscious awareness of our time and space and history is through our classic nervous system. The nervous system is actually where it begins, is with a set of receptors that are internal and external on our body, that when there is sufficient stimulation present, it will turn the nerve on that relays information to our brain, and the brain sort of looks at it, and then it makes a decision as to what to do with it. But if we look at the classic sentence, touch, sight, smell, taste, vibration, so on and so forth, those are within that process of the nervous system that informs us of where we are in time and space. And a couple things I think we need to be mindful of there is that the nervous system has got a threshold, meaning that a certain amount of stimulation has got to be present to turn the nerve on. And Tor Nordstranders wrote a book called The User Illusion, and he said that of the 25 million bits of information that we're exposed to every second, only 25% of that is strong enough to turn the nerves on. And so if that's the case, then our conscious awareness is only 25% of what's happening there. We're not seeing the whole picture. And his point was that if you trust your hunches and intuitions, they're more accurate because they're closer to reality, because they're based on far more information, because the nervous system is not the only communication system in the body. There are other communication systems that are infinitely faster, and they relay information more quickly, but they're not subject to the bias of the nerve threshold. And so therefore, if we learn how our truth speaks to us, that's the language that I use. There's something listening that's not necessarily our ears or our eyes or our nose smelling, but there's something sensing processes and objectives and opportunities and danger. And if we learn how that speaks to us, I believe that there's probably a certain way that that truth speaks to us that we know to be true, then we can actually, bypass some of the traditional objective ways of looking at things through our classic senses, and we can trust things through a slightly different process that in many instances may be more valuable. You take like a military jet pilot, and they have in the cockpit a voice that's hardwired into the electronics in the computer that tells them how to fly the plane, but they all turn it off because it distracts them from living in the present moment and making moment by moment decisions that are based upon their explicit level of training. And we do and can train ourselves into that place. And as our reservoir of knowledge and experiences increases, we have a larger library that can collate what it is that we're exposed to make more accurate decisions that can produce better outcomes in less time and less effort. So I'm a big fan of that. I personally feel that we should dedicate time every day to developing that capacity, because the science has been done on it. There's really no argument about the reality of certain things like this. It may seem contrarian to many, but their lack of awareness of that does not detract from the immense value that having that other complementary means of looking at things and making decisions by making that available. I can't state enough how important that really is.
Yeah, and we also have, as you said, a lot of research on how that helps leaders make decisions
Absolutely.
in times when we just don't have enough data, or we have conflicting data or too much data. To be able to again trust that, especially for serial entrepreneurs, those who have consistently done extraordinary things, oftentimes going against the data,
Right.
what what's,
Conventional wisdom. Yeah. Common wisdom.
yeah. And going back to, again, mindset, I want to bring up, since this is a podcast about mindset, about our beliefs, whether it's around readiness, whether it's around, other aspects of this, how important are our beliefs, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves around what's possible for us and for others, with regards to our ability to achieve extraordinary heights?
Well, I think obviously beliefs, that word in and of itself could have a variety of different definitions attached to it, some accurate, some not so accurate. Uh, I think that the most important point about this is that there has to be a body of evidence that confirms to us that what we're thinking is true. And history is a really good place to refer to, because here's what I see part of the dilemma being. And I see that there are no exemptions from this. Everybody has to deal with this. And in my opinion, we have two mentalities that are currently fighting against each other for control over our decision making. That's biologically hardwired into us. We have our survival us, that's our survival impulses that are hardwired, that are designed to protect us psychologically and physically in times of imminent danger. And yeah, if you're reacting out of that your entire life, well, you'll be out of danger's way, but you're not going to create a life of value and contribution, because those are really our fear-based survival impulses is what they are. They're not designed to win a gold medal. They're not designed to create vast achievement and terrific works of what humans are capable of. It's only about survival. But because it's about survival, that's our mental and physical primary imperative, because if we don't survive, then we're not going to be able to create anything of significance anyhow. So that's always there. And the point I want to make here is that that's turned on and you can't shut that off your entire life because it's hardwired. And why that is important is because it will save us in terms of imminent danger, both psychologically and physically. But that survivor side of us that science has clearly agreed on is there. There's no argument about that. I thought about this and I realized, well, you know what? I never met a person that could wait to get up and fail. So there must be another side to this. There are people that want to get up and make a contribution, and they want to create a life of value for themselves and meaning for humanity. And so I kind of thought about this for a while. I realized, well, you know what? I looked up in the dictionary and it said that the highest instinct that we are biologically hardwired with was not procreation. It was not food. It was not shelter, but it was seeking. Our highest instinct is to seek. And so I said, oh, now I get it. Because if we're born to seek, it means we're born to create. And if that's hardwired into us, that's for a lifetime. It's not just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or we retire at 50 and everything's cool. It means that we have an equal drive to create a life of distinction and value that is not survivorship. So our survivor side of us, that reflex side of us that wants to fight everything, and our second half, which is our drive and our instinct to be able to create and seek and do things of vast creativity that demonstrate the best of what humanity has to offer. These are at war with each other 24 hours a day for control over our decision making. And I think we know that because most of us feel a little bit unsettled most of the time every day. There's just a little bit of a tug. There's a little bit of a turbulence. Should I do this? Should I do that? There's this low grade. Maybe every once in a while you have a tranquil moment. And so I realized that this is Mortal Kombat for control over our legacy and control over the quality of life that we have. And what I do know with that is that our seeker side does can override the human fear-based survival impulses, our survivor self, but certain things have to be applied to push that open program into the background because you can't shut that off because it's biologically hardwired. And so therefore, I saw that there are certain things that we can do that allow us to come from our seeker self to suppress the survivor self so that we can move forward and do things that do end in significant creative contribution. It creates a value of purpose in our own life. It helps us answer a different level of why. And I feel that if we don't understand that biology, then it's going to be very hard because what happens is that people condemn themselves thinking that they should be farther along than they should be. Like, hey, I'm 73 and I should be free of that idea. Well, wait a minute. If it's hardwired and it's survival based and I can't get rid of it, well, that's something that's hardwired into me. That's not the real me. The real me is the one that can actually take charge and do the things that has to go right to be able to finish the task, to make my unique contribution. So I feel like many people give up on themselves way too early because they think these things that the human mindset thinks. The human mindset, I call it, because it's rigid. And I'm saying that the survival instinct is human mindset. It's a rigid mindset of things. You do this, you do that. Think good thoughts, you're going to win. Mow everything down in your way. You're going to get to the finish line. That's not a champion's mind. The champion's mind brings a living, breathing organism that is listening every second, and it's looking at what it's seeing and being told, and it's deciding how to collate, how to coordinate, what to store, how to respond to this appropriately. That's a mind. So champions have a mind. Our humanness has a rigid set of reactions that responds to things that can't get us into the winner's circle. So in my opinion, when we understand the difference, let me give you a couple of examples. So let's say you're given an opportunity. Well, the human mindset that's fear-based is going to say, what do I stand to lose here? What do I stand to lose? Champion would never say that. The champion is, well, what do I stand to win? What's the possibility here? How can we hug? How can we share with this thing? Most human mindsets thinks I got to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, then I can't excel. The champions know that that's not true. They know it's the one or two things that count. As long as you do that, then you're going to move forward. You're going to get to the victory circle, quicker. You could see that human mindset, I feel a little bit of fear, therefore I'm going to lose. Or I feel a little bit of fear, therefore I need to let the fear subside before I take action. No, you don't. You just need to do what has to go right to move it forward despite it and not be held hostage by it. So you can see that there's any number of things that we can look at here that I think are fundamentally important to understand. Because if we don't get the facts, so for example, another example, if I may here, is that, have you ever been startled by someone that said something to you and you said something back to them faster than you could think? How did that work out for you? Well, probably not so well. Well, that wasn't me. Well, yeah, it was you. You're the one that said it. Yeah, I know, but that's not the real me. Well, Jeff will admit to that. Yeah, that's your survival self taking over for you because it's faster than you could think because it's psychological survival, correct? So you could see that there are examples of this that if we look at it, it is absolutely crystal clear. And so when we develop the champion's mind, and that's not a rigid state of rules that you follow, thinking that following the rules will produce your greatness, because it won't. It's a living, breathing ability to interpretate reality as it currently exists and make the right historical choices that have proven themselves to deliver on the promise that may seem contrarian. And when we do that, then we start to gain control over our knowledge and understanding of self. And then we start to be able to produce this whole other way of manifesting an extraordinary life that demonstrates for other people what's possible, and it takes almost zero energy to ride that wave.
Thank you for that wonderful explanation and
I felt like I
example.
was on a rampage. I hope it wasn't too much, but
I agree. I so appreciate that you are, bringing this to our attention and reconnecting it to that deeper why, that right goal, as you said.
mhm,
And I agree with you also that mindsets in their nature are rigid. There are beliefs about something. If I believe something is true, that means I believe something is not. And this is where we want to look
mhm,
at kind of the I nickname it the paradoxical mindset or the integral
mhm,
mindset that can hold multiple things at the same time
mhm,
and still be curious about what might be highest. And that goes back to your assessment of right. What is highest and best for humanity, for that impact, and so on.
mhm.
And oftentimes we can't go wrong when we choose from that place. So, what guidance do you have for people about kind of as we complete here, if they are, holding on to these very rigid beliefs, around their readiness, around, I can't do it, it's too hard, I'm not good enough. Like, what can they do to soften or perhaps shift some of those?
That's a real tough one because much of it's very personalized, but then there are some general aspects to this as well. And the thing that I think is a starting point, for all of this is to realize that there's a biology behind this that we didn't ask for. And the self-critic we didn't ask for, that's a hardwired phenomena within us. It's a survival mechanism for whatever reason that doesn't serve us well, because how could it be anything different if every person on the planet is saying the same thing, even though they're different languages and cultural, uh, aspects, but yet the similarity is the same. We all have the same human hardwiring. That's why it's so ubiquitous, whether it's locker room or boardroom, it's always the same stuff, quite honestly. Well, I think, let me speak to let's say the seasoned executive, should we say, let's say in their 50s, maybe even younger than that. Kind of depends here, but let me say something I think that is really important is that uh, probably one of the most important things is to give yourself space to be able to contemplate, um, and open up the conscious awareness to let insights and revelations show up in our consciousness. Because when we do that, this is where the big ideas show up. And when we practice that, then we can take a vacation for 10 days and we can feel good about the vacation because we left and we came back and we realized the business didn't need us. Actually, probably the employees were glad that we were out of there so they could actually get their work done, you know? So I feel like exploring the possibility of what you think and believe that you need, because it may not be what you really do need. There may be something else beyond that. And a really important place to start with that is that, can we find the time to take off, to test the waters, to realize that the world could do without us for a couple of days or a week or two? And that's a very hard thing to do. But if we're not taking the time to recover, once the 20 or 30 years of reserve that we have is gone, then life becomes a lot more difficult, and the risks that are out there, in terms of health events, relationship failure, financial ruin, you know, they can increase in magnitude and frequency. And I feel that if we can learn to pause and step away thoughtfully and do it in a time that we don't feel threatened by doing it because it's too much too quick, then we can start to see that maybe some of the things that we thought were true about how much we're needed and how much effort needs to be put into this is perhaps can be adjusted down to a more reasonable percentage, but yet we still get the same value out of it in terms of life contribution and the life fulfillment that we get from it. That's the place where I would start. And I would also uh, do a complete health inventory to make sure that we have an accurate assessment of what our health status is, so that if the things we need to take care of, we can before we have to. And if there aren't any, then we can keep what we've got. And we can expand our timeline rather than shorten it up to increase our enthusiasm and belief in ourselves to create a lasting and valuable legacy for ourselves, our families, and also humanity.
And what about, thank you. And what about the not yet seasoned executive, someone who's starting out in their career, may not have a lot of evidence yet around what's possible for them or their innate strengths and abilities?
Yeah, that's complicated. I mean, it's not complicated to do, but it's a proximity issue, actually. I mean, there are not a lot of things out there that can really answer that question in a way that I believe that it needs to be answered. I wish we had a couple hours to talk about this, because I could share what I know about that. Because I do feel that there are certain things that are inherent in where we are in our development and in our age that are inescapable, that do us no favors, because they're based on a certain human nature mentality that could, like the 30s, in my opinion, they're the decade that sets up the next 20 years. And there's a lot of complexity in the 30s. I wish we had time to talk about it. But what I would suggest that anybody do is that if there's, remember that you're a human first and you're a business person second. And there are certain things in the human domain that need to be addressed to be able to stay in the game over the long term and, learn the lessons appropriately, not the hard way, so that we have the least amount of scar tissue possible as we move from where we are to where we can potentially get to. Be around people that can help you nourish, enrich, and cultivate your mind, body, and spirit, because those are all like essential. I would also say that that would be the best advice that I could give. I could find a mentor, but if I can explain something here, is that you can have a coach. Like when I work with you two, Bono had his coach. Great. He could help him with his singing, but he didn't know about the rest of his life. And then you could have a mentor that's got a little bit more bandwidth that can help you with, maybe like, let's say fitness, or let's say business mentor. Great. Well, what about the rest of your life? And then I think about Rocky. Rocky, the fighter, had Mickey, the old guy, in his corner. And Mickey had seen everything in life, and he was helping Rock while he was in the ring, slugging it out, know how to move to avoid the knockout blow, or yet give the knockout blow, because he saw things happening in real time in real life. And I feel like everybody needs like a sage, or somebody that's downstream, that's got a life practicality, that really knows the game, that's different than just the technical aspects of business, but about the game of life, and what are the things that we should be mindful of now that can help us or can hurt us, like in the future, and just have an exposure to that. So at least you're listening and you're exposing yourself to certain things that, if at least heard and understood with no action taken, later when it's time to take action on it, then you do it to avoid, some difficult consequences that may be the result of just trying to push too hard, too long. And then some things that happen that don't need to happen, don't happen.
Connecting back to the story that we started with around the
Oh,
adoption of your
yeah.
daughter, what guidance would you have to that younger you 10 years ago, or more now years ago, that
Yeah.
could have helped him to experience even more of the joy of the journey?
That's an interesting question, because I felt like we engaged it with explicit honor. And because of my experience in the high performance world that I'd been in for 30 years prior, working with very precocious people that are very quirky,
Mm.
and being able to cultivate and grow and help people go from the quirkiness to their genius and things like that, I felt that we were appropriately ready for that type of challenge, quite honestly. So I don't know how to answer that, or the things that we could have made it easier, because, it's like, I think this is what I want to say then. It's like, the most important thing for me is that I answer the calling, whatever that is. That's my criteria. If I answered the call, then whatever happens, that's okay because I showed up for duty. And in that situation, even though we didn't put anything away in our retirement for 10 years between 58 and 68, I could care less because I wasn't going to be intimidated by that to make a decision that I wasn't called to do. It's more important for me to show up and answer the calling, and whatever the outcome of that is, then so be it. You know, it doesn't matter to me because I answered the call. There has to be some standard that gets us beyond ourselves. I didn't do it for that reason because I'm not motivated by that. I've never done anything to prove to people I can when they said I couldn't. I've never done that. I'm just someone that's explored possibility and showed up for duty. And however this unfolded is the way that it did. So I think maybe that's the answer to what I would say I learned from this is that, like, I think you need to live bold, but bold doesn't mean reckless. Bold doesn't mean do it my way. To me, bold means you step into the calling, whatever that is, and it's like, again, so I didn't put anything away for our retirement. Like, what am I supposed to do? Quit and give up on my daughter, just because I needed to feel better about me? No, you don't do that. You don't barter for things. It's not like, look, God, if I do this for my daughter, you're going to give me this, right? You don't do that. You just show up and get the job done, or whatever it is. Because you can walk out the field knowing that there's, nothing more that could have been done. So nobody could expect anything more. And I wasn't personally doing it to get anybody's brownie button to begin with. It's like, just like whatever it is. And so the boldness side of this, and here's what I've learned, is that, I could sleep in a cot in the corner of a room for the rest of my life and I wouldn't care because I wouldn't care as long as I got my brain and I can service people and help shortcut their learning curve to their bigger future, have a good couple of really good bicycles, I'm fine. But, on the other side of this idea of boldness, it's not you're making a statement to humanity. You're showing up with a presence of being of the person that you are. You're not trying to make a point to anybody. And I have noticed that there's a level of invincibility that comes along with that. Because if you did what we did, most people give the child back and they get divorced within a year. The lying, the deceit, the treachery, the complete disregard for human decency, people can't take it. We weren't in there to take it. We were there to finish the job. My daughter needed to learn to trust us. I knew that her soul was not tampered with because I prayed on my knees. Is this kid that we should be the parents of? The answer was yeah. I could tell you, she is so our daughter, it's not even funny. And so the idea here of this idea of invincibility, because having gone through something like that is so deep and so long and so penetrating, the truth is that if your life is too easy, you're never going to ask a set of questions deep enough to find out who you really are anyhow, because you don't know. Because life is too good. You have to have something that just is so difficult that you're forced to ask a different set of questions, which I guess we were in a certain sense. And so the invincibility side of it, like, what, people going to cancel me? Good, go ahead and cancel me. You think I care? I still got me. I still showed up for duty. Do whatever you want. I'm sorry, it isn't going to have any impact on me. And I feel that when you sort of have that, but it's not a chip on your shoulder, you're kind of reconciled to things as they are because you were deliberate in your choices, because you made the choice that was presented to you, that you did without flinching. You didn't do it to be seen. You didn't do it to get an outcome. No, you did it because it was the right thing to do. I think that's the most important thing, because then we can live with a certain level of tranquility of being. And there's a certain invincibility because you always realize that you can land on your feet no matter where you are in any given set of circumstances. And it allows you, you want to have an exciting life, you start telling the truth. And, when you're in a situation where you've been involved with something like this that has been so all consuming, you really realize the freedom and the expression that really comes from it, because you've let go of the things that you think that you need. Most of the things that we think that we need, you don't need them. You really don't. I mean, look, I love beautiful things. I love great design. I love great cars. I love great bicycles. I love great architecture. I love all that stuff. But again, the self-sufficiency outside of that, I think that's the grand prize, because then you can show up and you can give the honest measure of yourself as you really are to anybody, anytime, under any given set of circumstances. And that to me is a gift, quite honestly.
And thank you for that gift, for the gift of inviting those listening to answer their own heart's call, to be bold and to do that.
Well,
And
thank you. Well, what an amazing experience this has been. I thank you so much.
it's truly a joy and an honor to have you, and a blessing. And I'm so grateful that uh, that you are that life has given you beautiful fruits from all of those things that you have done, from the kindness of your heart and this beautiful grandchild. I truly wish your family all the best in the world.
Thank you.
How can how can people learn even more about you, your mentoring, coaching, all the wonderful things that you do for high performers and businesses?
Yeah, probably a couple things. My website is www.drjeffspencer.com, DRJEFFSPENCER.com. And you can take a trip through the website there. It's got some stuff. And, if you'd like to have a conversation, there's a place that you can request that. And also one of the things that I would suggest is that there's a place on there where I do what I call the weekly spin. And this is where I'm on my bike and I'm doing a video or two about things that I think that are relevant that we need to know if we want to become a full potential player. It's not silly stuff. I'm not taking pictures of my food, things like that. But I'm really saying something that I'm inspired to say that has relevancy in my experience on what it takes to get to the top and stay there. So I hope to see you then.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Jeff.
so much.
Hi, game changers. It's Vered. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Jeff Spencer. What a really cool honor it is to learn from someone who coaches U2 and Richard Branson and Tiger Woods, and the list goes on, because his approach to setting right goals, RIGHT, resonance, impact, growth, humanity, time, when you take those aspects into account, you're much more likely to not only achieve what it is that you want, meaning, cross the finish line, so to speak, but also to feel a sense of meaning and fulfillment in the creation of that outcome. And if you enjoyed this, I invite you to check out episode 99 with Michael Balkin about how to create habits that stick, really around kind of the mindsets. And I think you'll really, really enjoy that as well. So all my love, I wish you all the best in the world. And thank you for subscribing, being a part of this community. And if you haven't already, download the Momentum Institute app. There's a free course there for you on mindset, and I hope that will be helpful to you. So all my love. Bye for now.